Welcome to Outside the Playbook. I'm Josh. He's Ryan. Today we're gonna be talking about free agency and all the different deals that went down, all the different moves. You know, who's the who made the biggest splash so far this summer? Who we're trying to see make some more moves. We'll talk about the Lakers and whether or not they're a super team. We're gonna be talking about Dennis Schroeder and how he missed out on being part of a super team. So far we got some of the moves I've been looking at a lot closely is obviously Chris Paul re-signed with the Phoenix Suns. That's going to take him to about the age of 40, roughly. Lonzo Ball to Chicago, Russ to the Lakers. Absolutely one of the best deals of the summer for the Lakers, I'll say. Lowry to Miami, and all the game bangers they got, all the game bangers they just signed to that team. Got my Miami Heat jersey on. Um, a lot of different teams made some moves. Who was the biggest surprise for you?
I say biggest surprise for me was definitely Russ to the Lakers. I know he has roots in Los Angeles, but I just wasn't expecting it.
Mm.
But once I started hearing buzz about it and realized that it's a legit possibility, even when because you kind of heard rumors about it before the deal kind of fully was completed,
Yeah, they
and
was
there was some
talking
back and
about
forth about it.
either Dame
Is it
becoming available
Yeah,
or
like, is
Russ.
it done? Is it for real? Is it going to go through for real or not? And when it finally did, I'm like, wow, okay, that's a game changer, definitely for the Western Conference. I wasn't too surprised with Chris Paul. I really was hoping that he would re-sign with Phoenix because I think they have a legit chance. I think they have a chance to definitely get back to the Western Conference Final. I don't know if they make it out of the West. I would like to see what the Lakers look like with Russ, but I think Chris made a really good decision staying with Phoenix. But I say in terms of what I didn't expect Russ to go to the Lakers.
Uh, for me, one of the biggest unexpected moves was Lonzo going to Chicago. And also that, you might not guess it, but that's actually one of my favorite moves so far in the summer because Zoe leaves New Orleans. I don't like him leaving there because of the hole he leaves. Zoe, Zion, Brandon Ingram, those three, I think they could have been a significant trio in the Western Conference if they stayed together long term. But you look at what Zoe takes to Chicago. They have Vucevic. He got added last season while Levine was out, still recovering and trying to get healthy. So we didn't really see those two play too many games together. But I think that could have been a playoff team, maybe an eighth seed or even a bubble team. And then you add in Zoe at the point guard position. You loosen up Zach Levine from having to create every single time up the court, whether it's passing or scoring. Takes a little bit of pressure off him from having to shoot the ball also. You get DeRozan, mid-range game. That's a Hall of Fame badge right there. And then you have Vucevic in the post, so you have some outside, you have some inside. You got a lot of young guys with Williams and Kobe White still developing. I like the way that team looks. Then you add in Alex Caruso from the Lakers. This is going to be a problem, especially in the Central Division. This is going to be a problem in the Eastern Conference because you have a lot of teams that's wanting to develop quickly, and you have Milwaukee, you have Detroit. Um, Nobody knows what's happening with Cleveland, but I like the signing of Jared Allen. You keep Sexton for the time being and Garland. If those three guys they can grow up in the league together, that'll be a decent team. Like I said, these are all bubble teams, but you don't want to see them if you're a top seed because you like an easier first round if you're a 1, 2, or 3 seed. But like I said, Chicago, I like them picking up Zoe. They're actually facing some tampering issues because they announced the trade that went through at like 6:01 or something like that. I think it was like 6:01 when free agency opened at 6 p.m. So they're looking at a lot of trouble. Kyle Lowry to Miami, that was looking at some issues as well. But the fact of the matter is, they've been talking to Toronto about this deal at the trade deadline, so they had some things in place. They may not get hit at all, but I like a lot of the moves. Like I said, Chicago might be my favorite.
Yeah, I think Chicago is significant mainly because of the conference. Being in the East, I think that does push them into playoff contention. Um, So I would like definitely like to see Zoe and Zach Levine together. Um, you know, we know what type of scorer Zach Levine has the capacity to be. So putting him side by side with a point guard at Zoe's level, which I think he's not talked about enough in terms of his ability to facilitate. I know he's had issues in the past, with shooting and scoring. But no doubt, I think he has a great vision. I think he facilitates well. I think he's only can get better. I think he's still relatively young in his NBA career still. So I'm gonna be curious to see what those two look like together. I could easily see them being definitely at least an 8 seed. I think maybe even a 7 seed in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. Um, for me, the most important move was probably getting DeRozan because now you have another vet that can be a secondary scorer to Zach Levine, which he hasn't had since he got in Chicago. Not a veteran presence that's been known to get it done every single night, putting the ball in the basket, getting to his spots. Has a game that you can go to even when he doesn't have it that night. Very important. But another one of the more important deals around the league is Phoenix bringing back Chris Paul. I think it's important because you don't want to be caught in a position where you're just looked at as a one-hit wonder. You don't want to come back next season. Now you're on a scouting report. Everybody knows your sets pretty well, what you like to do. They know what they want to take away to put you in this bad spot. If you bring back Chris Paul, you still have that floor general, veteran leadership. I mean, no matter how old he gets, that's still Chris Paul. He might be slowing down in speed, but he's still extremely intelligent. He can teach guys things. He can pass on knowledge to other guys. So now you bring Chris Paul back for another 3 or 4 years, and then also on top of that, you sign Cameron Payne to another 2-year deal. So you have somebody that can come off the bench that CP3 can mentor, teach, pass on a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of knowledge, adding on to what Cameron Payne brings to the table. So I mean, I like their signings. I like them bringing everybody back. I think they should add maybe one or two other guys. I'm not really sure, where you find them at, but I think they're one or two more pieces away from being a perennial playoff team every single year up until Chris Paul retires, because you got to factor into the fact that Ayton is still extremely young. Devin Booker is still really young. So those guys, they have a lot of years ahead of them of being elite. Chris Paul is in the twilight of his career, so you need to maximize his wisdom and knowledge and maximize the talent around him. So I mean, I like that deal, bringing him back. I look at Iggy going back to Golden State. That's like one of those, old Yeller type things. Like it's about time you put them out of their misery. Golden State is going to be a great playoff team next year, in my opinion, bringing back Clay, but I don't think, them trying to add everybody back from the old days, bringing back Iggy, getting the band back together, I don't think that's going to produce the same results that it did before, but they're still going to be the Golden State Warriors that we love to see, and the intelligence of that team is still going to be sky high. I look for Wiseman to come back and make an impact if he doesn't get traded for Ben Simmons, because everybody's keeping an eye on that. What other deals? What other deals did you like? I mean, we know that Kawhi Leonard, he held out for quite some time on his deal. They ended up re-signing him to his deal with LA. Duncan Robinson stays with Miami, a 90 million 5-year deal. That's the highest deal by an undrafted player in NBA history. So I mean, it pays to be a star in your role, master your craft, be an elite shooter in the league. Tim Hardaway, he goes back to Dallas. Dwight Howard, he's also back in LA. Trae Young and Luka Doncic, they get the 5-year max off of their rookie extension. So those two guys, I mean, that's one of the best trades where you look and you say that works out perfectly for both teams. You get a superstar that you want, franchise leader. I mean, what do you think about those two guys in the coming years, especially, considering they both finally broke through and made the playoffs, even though Dallas did last year, but both of them are in the playoffs now. What do you expect to see from them in the coming years?
Yeah, I think they both. I think Trae Young is especially. I think this was a great opportunity this past season for him to solidify himself as a solid star franchise player. I think he did that. Especially with the upset win back in the playoffs over Philadelphia. So I mean, I think the sky's the limit for both of them. I think they've both proven themselves as once in a generation type talents. And again, going back to the backstory of essentially the teams trading for each of them, and I think to a certain extent, they'll always be compared to each other because of the connection that they have
Yeah.
from how they came into the league and how the draft ended up. So it's you always that I think this is going to be a narrative that will last for quite some time, like Trey versus Luca. Looking back, let's say we give it another 5 or 10 years, see them continue to develop, see what happens with them. I think that's going to be a point of conversation in terms of should one team have kept the other or vice versa. But I'm happy for them both. I mean, they're well deserving of the supermax, the supermax extensions. They've proven themselves, in the playoffs and during the regular season. So I'm excited to see them. I think the future of the league is really bright. We have like some really, as we talk about like some of the Chris Pauls and some of the LeBrons and those who are kind of you could argue those final, maybe 4 to 5 years. Who's coming up behind them to fill that void and possibly take the league to the next level? And Trey Young and Luka Doncic are definitely, two names that you got to throw in that hat.
Uh, I guess that's the perfect segue into the Lakers conversation because there's a lot of people looking at the age of the players and saying this is not a super team. They're just old guys chasing another ring. Um, they are old. Probably one of the oldest teams in the. I think they are the oldest team in the league by a large margin. They only have maybe 4 or 5 guys under the age of 30. But when I'm looking at this team, I mean, you still have LeBron. He's still top 5 in the league at this stage of his career at 36, 37 years old. Dwight Howard. Um, he's a elite backup big in the league. He's not an elite starting center anymore, but he's an elite backup center. You bring in Melo, he's still somebody you can give the ball to get a bucket. Russell Westbrook averaged another triple double, 4th time in his career. I mean, there's still guys on that team that can get the job done, and I don't see why everybody seems to be so disrespectful or dismissive of them. I mean, the fit may not make sense at certain points throughout the season. I mean, starting out, it may look a little ugly. There's going to be high energy in the Lakers arena in Staples Center. They're going to be a rowdy crowd every single night, but feeding off that energy is only going to take you so far because then you got to play the game. They're going to have a great regular season. We know LeBron in the regular season is elite. Russ, AD, those guys are pretty good in the regular season. The issues that they face is when the game slows down, they need shooters around them. Russ is great when he has maybe 3 other shooters on the floor with him. So is LeBron. So is AD. AD is more effective when he can go one-on-one with the person that's guarding the rim. There's a lot of situations that they're going to face where they're going to be uncomfortable offensively, but I think they are still a very elite team. I mean, they may not have much shooting, and they lost KCP and Kuz and Caruso, a couple other guys. They lost the Morris twin to Miami, so you lose shooting, but you get star power. For one, that can be intimidating alone. Stepping on the floor with 5 or 6 future Hall of Famers, that can be intimidating. So you have that working in your favor. You go one-on-one with one of the greatest players ever, in LeBron or Melo or Russell or AD or Dwight. You have a lot of firepower, but like I said, the problem they're going to face is when the game slows down for them when they get to the playoffs. I still consider them a super team. They're going to be, I say, 1 or 2 in the Western Conference, if not the entire league. But I'm a little suspicious of the playoff fit, not so much the regular season fit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I I was on social media last week and speaking of folks kind of trashing the move. I read one meme that said that the Lakers managed to build a retirement home in 72 hours. So I just, it was humorous, but um, it's, yes, they're older, but to your point, I mean, these are still some of the greatest players that we've seen, especially those that have been in their prime, that aren't in their prime anymore. So I do think there's an intimidation factor. I do think just veteran presence. I think this will be an extremely smart team, and even though the fit may not be as ideal as what we may want, I think that it will balance out when you also factor in IQ and veteran presence.
Yeah.
I think that's going to offset a little bit of the issues that we see with the fit. I think Frank Vogel, I think he's well equipped to be able to figure it out. I mean, he's proven himself as a very capable coach, obviously championship level coach. So I don't necessarily have concerns so much about the fit. I think it's just going to take them some time. So I think don't be surprised when if they start the regular season off mediocre or maybe even poorly by our standards. I think it just could take them time to figure it out. But I think once they do figure it out, I definitely see them being, definitely top three in the Western Conference for sure, if not the entire league. Once they do have some time to be able to play together, and I think too, my reports, that I was reading was basically like LeBron, no surprise, was one of the main factors in choosing Russ over, it was Russ was on the table, Buddy Hield was on the table, which many people were saying was a better fit for the Lakers compared to Russ. And from what I've read, LeBron was essentially, one of the key voices that said, "Hey, I want Russ over Buddy." So guy like LeBron and knowing what his IQ is like and knowing the caliber of mind that basketball mind that he has, I don't think he would pick Russ over Buddy if he truly had concerns about how well they're going to be able to play together. If you have a chance to get an MVP caliber player, why are you going to pass that up? I get again the fit could be tough at times, but how many opportunities will you have to get an MVP caliber player like Russ? So, my opinion, you have the opportunity, you go for it, you figure it out later.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, that's your insurance policy for if LeBron or AD goes out, you still have an MVP on your team. And also, you solidify that point guard position by signing Kendrick Nunn. That guy can get a bucket. He's a bucket. He's averaged at least 15 points a game the past 2 seasons, and he was undrafted, and they get him for cheap, 5 mil a year, 2-year deal, and then you have to do that deal because Dennis Schroeder he turns down your $84 million extension that he could have solidified his place on a championship team, got himself some guaranteed money. But I mean, this is one of those situations where you bet on yourself and it doesn't work out simply because you didn't show up in the playoffs. That's where he would have made his money. If he wanted 125 mil on a 5-year deal, he should have tried to make that money in the playoffs. And he got outplayed by, I mean, Chris Paul is still a good player. He's 35, 36 years old, but you got outplayed and outmatched. Not only by him, but by also Cameron Payne, somebody who was out of the league maybe a year or two ago. So you get outplayed by an older guy. He's going to the Hall of Fame, but he's still older. You get outplayed by a younger guy who was out of the league, and you simply don't do anything to help your team, especially when you had the opportunity to when AD was out. So, I mean, that sucks for him. That's terrible. I feel bad that he doesn't, get the deal that he wanted, but he still signs with the Boston Celtics on a 1-year, $5.9 million deal. And pretty much, I mean, if he doesn't show up this year, he's never going to see that big payday. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. One other move that I thought was pretty good, and I was actually surprised by. I was surprised by Andre Drummond going to the Sixers. Um, Notwithstanding the little kind of beef over the last few seasons with Joel Embiid, but I think the Sixers are definitely they're I think they have one of the best center combinations in the league. Andre being a former All Star, can still get it done, especially on the boards. I think he averaged around 14, almost 15 points, I think, last season. So I think Philly got a steal with Andre coming to back up Joel. I think that's also an insurance policy for them. Should Joel deal with some of the injury issues that he has, over the course of his career, you still have a solid person in Andre Drummond who can at least still be a dominant force at the center position. So that was one that I was surprised by Andre's decision, but I think it was a good move for Philly. And depending on what happens with Ben Simmons, I think we could be looking at a very different Philly team come next season as well.